pressing the live button, and I think
Okay.
we are live now technically. So, welcome to Matt Rybicki, and I always enjoy doing these live streams. I do them way too infrequently. I think the last time I did it, it's probably been at least a year, maybe more. And I especially love chatting with people who have another domain of expertise, which you clearly do. I've been such a fan of Learn Jazz Bass with Matt Rybicki. What a great
Thank you.
YouTube find. And it's just been so cool to see what you've been up to. And so we're going to dig in today to walking essential tunes, walking bass, jazz bass. And folks, as you hop on here, let us know where you are. Let us know a little bit about yourself. Just say hi. That'd be great. And if you're watching after the fact, drop us a comment too. That'd be great. So
Yeah.
for those that aren't familiar with Matt, we've got all things Matt linked up in the description for this. So we've got Matt's, obviously his
Thank you.
YouTube channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, check out his YouTube channel, his website, and then this new course, which he is launching this week, which is kind of a culmination of what he's been doing on YouTube the last few years. But maybe just give us a little bit of background, Matt. I mean, you've played with everybody. You've played in all the venues, all the good things. You teach at Jewelart, among other places. And how did you get into music? Just give us a little bit of your background.
Oh, sure. Well, thanks, first of all, for having me. I love hanging out with you. As you know, I'm a fan, first and foremost, of you, man, and all you've been doing. So, yeah, I got interested in playing bass when a group of friends in 8th grade were like, we're starting a band. We need bass. And I said, I don't know what that is, but I'll do it. And just surprisingly, the personality of it fit with my personality. I imagine us bass players know what I mean, sort of shorthand. Like there's something about the supportive thing that I dig. So, but that was like rock and pop music, playing electric, wanted to play heavy metal and stuff. And then I started to get really serious in high school about it. And I was lucky to go to Berkeley and finish Berkeley College of Music. One of the rare finishers after a break in the middle. I actually took a year off, but I did finish. And I got so much there, and I really fell in love with straight ahead jazz there. And I specifically remember the moment, in fact, that I felt the same emotional connection to the music that I had when I was the emotions that I felt towards the other music I was listening to and loving. So after Berkeley, then I stayed in Boston for a year working, gigging, and then went to New York. And I was there for 26 years. During that time in Manhattan, during that time, I did go to Juilliard for the beginning graduating class of the jazz program. So this was in 2002. 2002 to 2004, and so got to play and meet with a lot of great players. But I had already been a professional in the city for 10 years before that, so a lot of like the instructors were already sort of colleagues in a way. Like I had already played and known Wynton Marsalis and Wycliffe Gordon and other folks in the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra big band. So I'd known them already a bit. That didn't mean that it was easy for me to get into the Juilliard. I actually failed the first time. Had to audition again. It was the D flat blues that got me the first time. And so then it was just many more years in New York after that of playing and teaching and lots of performances around the world and living that freelance lifestyle, which was great. Lots of work on Broadway as well. And so, yeah, it was a whole full professional life in Manhattan, traveling the world as a performer. And then recently moved to North Carolina with my wife and young son, Miles, who's 8 now, to give him a sort of a better experience growing up. Cause the city is rough for kids. I mean, some people really feel like, New York is great for kids, and I can see that perspective too, but like we were encountering things that we didn't really want him to be around. Our particular environment was not great. So anyways, we're in North Carolina. It's great. We're really enjoying it. And I get the opportunity that, in a sense, to have more mental and actual space to work on this kind of thing where I wouldn't have had a home office studio in New York. We had a 2-bedroom for 3 of us, and so I had this opportunity to have the time and the space to do this kind of course and things like that. So yeah, straight ahead jazz, traditional jazz has been my love for many, many years. And I got a great opportunities over the years to not only meet and listen to like Ray Brown many times, but also have lessons with him and other amazing musicians. I mean, living legends and some that have already passed. So it's a good experience,
Well, it's great, and it's cool that you got the space to do what you've been doing online. Was it the North Carolina move that sort of got the YouTube channel going? Like, when did the idea for the channel happen? Because you came out of the gate swinging, my friend. I mean, from video one, it was like, please, anybody watching this, if you want to laugh, do this, but don't go back and watch my first videos. They're hilarious trash filmed on some like 2 megapixel, camera, and but everything you did is just like the clarity of what you do and the structure and what you deliver is really beautiful. So when did this YouTube and now this week, this course that you just put out, when did this idea kind of come to you?
Like about maybe a year and a half ago, I had some colleagues who were doing the same sort of thing in other spaces. And as I really have been watching you for a while, as well as our other colleagues that are doing this. So I already had sort of, a little bit of a foot in the door, so to speak, with at least just understanding what it was by watching you all. But when I met some colleagues here, it was more their experience and my ability to sort of talk to them on a regular schedule, so to speak, like really have contact with them a lot, that said, oh, I think I can do this. I think it can work. And so I gave it a shot, and it's going great. I really enjoy it a lot.
And you've covered all sorts of aspects of bass playing and technique and tunes. But so this course. Oh, and by the way, folks, as we're going through this week, we'll have some time for any questions that folks want answered. So feel free to drop a comment. Any questions you've got. But talk about the idea for this course, because it's a very specific topic you're getting into, right? Walking essential tunes, and I love it. I've got a chance to dig in behind the scenes and dig through a bunch of the lessons, and they're just absolutely beautiful. But like, how about this specific topic for the course? Why that specifically?
Right. Well, what I wanted to do was try to bridge a bit of a gap that I think exists in some educational scenarios, meaning there's a lot about right when you start. There's a lot of information about that. And there's a lot about super high level stuff. And there's very little right in the middle. And so I'm trying to hopefully invite people to that space where you've got some experience already, but you're trying to sort of come out of primary school, so to speak. Just go to the next grade up a little bit on the way to hopefully continuing the musical progress that you're doing. So I wanted to approach concepts that I thought would be immediately helpful to people. So like, in other words, you can apply the knowledge and the concepts in a practical way right away. That's the intention, at least, that you're absorbing this stuff so that you can immediately own it and go out to a jam session, a gig, and so on, and really be very, very confident about the material. And there's a lot of experiences that I've had with students. Hi, KB. I see a smiley face. There's a lot of experiences that I've had with students where, as I think I've said to you before, we'll go over, yes, we often start with the blues because various reasons that we can, if you want to, talk about why that's good or bad, but like why we start there a lot of times. There's definitely good reasons to do that. But so you say to a student like, okay, let's play a blues. Can you walk me a blues line just to sort of assess where they are? And sometimes it'll be like, oh yeah, no problem. and they do it and they feel, it's very clear that they think that they have command of it, but they don't. How well do you really know this thing? Like, yeah, it sort of makes sense, maybe makes sense conceptually, but they don't have it under their hands enough, and so on and so forth. So the idea is like, okay, let's really dive in. Let's really dress ourselves in this information so that you can walk around, wearing your new clothing of information to follow that. So the idea was, can I do something practical? Can I fill a niche that is, I think, a little bit shallow? Can I add to that? And can I provide something in a different way, or at least with a different perspective than what other people are doing? So yes, I'm covering some material that of course other people cover, but I'm trying to give it a little bit of a different spin. Those that watch me know, I'm often trying to do that. Like, what's a different way into this information? Because we all know we learn different ways. And so perhaps this might speak or resonate with somebody in a way that somebody else's way of trying to convey that information doesn't resonate with them. So it was really about finding the broad idea of what we can bring to everyone and go, okay, we all need to know this basic stuff, this basic DNA of the songs that we play. And no matter your level of improvisation, if you don't understand the song itself, you're going to have a harder time, whether it's walking bass lines or a two feel, or you're soloing or creating some other kind of bass line on an original tune that is using this kind of harmonic conception. We need to understand the tune. So it's about exploring the structure of these integral parts of the music, but doing it with the vehicle of using the master's lines. So lots of transcriptions, and also talking about how they create those, talking about how we can create our own, and so on. So it's really meant to be very much giving a sense of, as I say, ownership to the viewer, as opposed to just like, this is what I think, take it or leave it. It's more than that to me.
I like that phrase, the DNA of the tunes of the songs. It's a really interesting concept. That's totally like it's so cool. Like what commonalities can we then apply to like so many broad, categories of tunes? And I love how early on in the course, like I think you were taking a line of Paul Chambers, and you were kind of talking about why you think he might have done this, or making a decision. And it's that whole decision-making process in the bass lines is fascinating for me. And early on, you're also talking about, you're just laying down some like, look, we're going to play the root of the chord on the downbeat, but if the chord goes for a couple bars, maybe we'll do this and that. And it's just those things that we all like are not, it's like these question marks that we bass players all have. I really like because you really can get into the weeds with this stuff. I like how you dig into it, and yeah, the DNA of the tunes. It's a really cool concept, really cool phrase.
Thank you. Yeah, and part, I think, too, of what I'm hoping is something that is appealing to folks is that, yes, it's asynchronous. So you go at your own pace. It's not a live one-on-one thing, nor is it a monthly thing. It just exists there for you at your own, when you're ready. And if you need to take a break and come back, that's great. But at the same time, I thought about what, if anything, can I do to try to make it feel like more of a live situation? So I've set up regular scenarios in every part, essentially, or parts of every part, because there's actually five courses in one is really what this is ultimately. I mean, there's 126 individual videos, so it's a lot. And as you know, I'm a classic overachiever. So one part of every section, so to speak, big section, involves portions of doing call and response with the person that is watching. I'm playing, and then I'm actually literally waiting for you to play the next four lines, or the next four bars. And we do this with lines that I wrote. We do this with master bassist, transcription lines, and then talk about them as well. So that sense of like, you can do something right now. And I'm also asking the viewers, friends, students, whatever you want to call it, to do some homework. I have specific assignments. Hey, do this now. I'm saying after we do this, then do this. And I'm also saying you can submit stuff to me if you want. You don't have to, but if you want feedback on an improvised bass line or an answer to like a written assignment, quote unquote, there's a couple of those in there, you can send it to me and I'll be happy to respond and try to continue to help, no matter sort of when in time that is. We're existing at a time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and thanks, Daniela, for the comment.
Hi, Danilo.
The idea of a DNA of tunes. Yeah. And Bach, yes, absolutely, really good on improvising on a tune. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And also, Ben Wolf, who was one of my instructors at Juilliard, was like really big into the Bach chorales and having us play. What he wanted us to do was very hard, is play the bottom line and sing the top line. Did you guys ever have to do that in your sort of world?
Oh, a little bit. Yeah. Those were some of the more terrifying days for me.
Yes.
College.
Right. But Ben was like, Bach is the master of bass lines. You know what I mean? Like, you really got to get inside, like understanding. But it's really, I'm hoping that connection with folks, be it out of time, will still make them feel like it is valuable to spend time there, and that I'm rooting for them and I'm on their side and I'm there if there's some need for a question. Just today, like we have a Facebook group just for those who who got the course and the 5-part course. And even today, there were some questions about like, hey, is this transcription from this? And so on. So just discussion, and that can happen at everybody's own pace, which I think is pretty cool. And then I'm also like thinking too, forgive me for just jumping into the next thought, but that what I tried to do, and I hope that came across in what you saw, Jason, is to have a little bit of a different structure than what I think a lot of these have, which is to start with an idea, but I mean, in my head, I'm starting with a general idea, but when I'm presenting it, I have deconstructed it into more discrete sort of bite-sized parts so that we can look at things in smaller bits and do that in a certain progression. And then at the end, reassemble all those parts together. And I think that gives such a broader and deeper insight into this transcription, for example, or what to play on a major blues, for example. So doing just little sections at a time and then putting it into context, like I find for myself, it really opens things up. So I hope it does for other people too.
Yeah, it reminds me of how I would like practice and break down a piece. I don't just like charge through over and over again. Like getting in and getting into the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
So what you've got basically 5 courses in one. So what are these 5 components? Just can you go through those? Yeah.
The first is major blues. As I said, we usually tend to start there. Yes, but let's get really inside it. Let's really understand it. So major blues is the first, and then the minor blues. And then what I sort of shorthand call standards is the third. Those are elements that are in standards like 1625. So let me go on. So there's standards, and then harmonic cycles is the fourth. So those are a couple of aspects, pretty much mostly having to do with cycles of fourths that also exist in commonly standards, but in also jazz tunes too, written, not just American songbooks things. Cycles of fourths is part of Western harmony, isn't it? So taking a deeper look at that, and then lastly, the fifth part is rhythm changes, which might to some sound like that's not maybe enough for a whole thing, but when you actually take a look at it, not only are there so many variations that it's worth spending a lot of time on, but it very elegantly combines everything we talked about in the other topics, because you're dealing with all the chords we examined and all the kind of harmony we examined and all the form stuff we examined. It's all sort of wrapped up neatly in the rhythm changes thing. So I thought it was actually serendipitous. I didn't plan it that way, but I realized as I was doing it, oh, this all feeds into this rhythm changes thing, which is pretty neat. So those are the basics. And then in each one, there is an internal structure, but what I'm using that structure for is to examine different concepts like, what do I play on XYZ on this chord? What are some options to play on a minor 2 chord or a 2 minor chord? Or what are the various turnarounds for the minor blues? Or what exactly is a 1-6-2-5, and why don't I actually find it in that order? Because it's very often not actually in that order in a tune. So they're all the idea is those headings are vehicles for exploring the data that is applied to every kind of tune. Because we're all, at least in jazz, of course in all music, what am I saying? We're always going to be encountering dominant chords. All of us are in Western music. So, why not use the blues to talk about that? Because there's an awful lot of dominant chords in the codified sort of modern version of the blues.
So you mentioned earlier I mean, my words, but for better or worse, we start with the blues, or we typically do when we're doing what? Right. Why do we start with the blues? Maybe that's a simple question, but
no, it's a great question, and I think it's worth. Thanks, John Thorne. John Thorne said something nice.
Nice.
I understand why, because there are a small number of chords. There's typically just 1, 2, 3, 4 chords, or sometimes 3, depending where you're coming from. And the, oh my gosh, Mr. Israels is here. Wow. Mr. Chuck Israels. Hi. If you're comfortable enough to be spontaneous in the blues and rhythm changes, you can handle most things. You said it, sir. What an honor to have you here. Oh my gosh.
Great. Thanks, Chuck. Thanks for being here.
Yes. Wow. That's pretty neat, everybody that's watching. That is the Mr. Israels. Woo. Okay. Please chime in if I'm saying anything wrong, Mr. Israels. Just jump right in. So the blues. So we have the small number of chords. There's a small number of bars in the form, so it feels accessible. And you can also give students a little bit of information as far as improvising. And the stereotypical thing is to play this kind of blues scale that everybody gives, like this minor blues scale or minor pentatonic scale or whatever. And hey, you can sort of improvise. But what that skips over is all the not only sort of profound backstory of what the blues means and where it comes from, but also the way that the fact that dominant chords don't exist as dominant chords except in one place, even though we're sort of using them where they're taught, as the first chord is this dominant chord, and we think of it sort of as the one chord of the key, but it's actually not a key center, and is like a whole bunch of stuff that's actually a lot deeper. So it's approachable from one level, but in another, if you really want to understand it, you've got to spend more time, which a lot of folks don't have the opportunity to do.
Yeah, it's something going through what you've put together, which I think is really lovely. It made me think. I've thought about this before. The experience of and you've had such great amount of experience teaching too. Person to person teaching lessons. Yeah. So it's just kind of cool to see how you structured this and sequencing things together. There's so much that one can learn just from watching your YouTube channel or Paul Thompson's YouTube channel or Discover Double Bass. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of like grabbing things out of the air, maybe not in sequence. And so like actually going through a sequence, whether it's one of our classic method books or books of transcriptions or your course. I mean, there's like a power to actually, building,
exactly.
piece by piece.
Yeah, and who does that really well? A little side plug for Mr. Israels. He's got a new book out. Have you checked that out yet? It's
I have. I did.
excellent.
Just did a YouTube video on it. Yeah, it's excellent.
How did I miss that? I missed it. I'm sorry.
It's okay. You've been busy, my friend, putting some. But yeah, it's a wonderful wonderful new book.
Yeah, and I love, and that this is the thing too, that I'm trying to come from the perspective of, hey, I've done these books too. I've done these method books too, and I know what I have some experience saying this really works for me or doesn't work for me, or this is way too disjointed, or I love this layout, for example. Like I think the way that Mr. Israel's is laying his stuff out, to me, makes total sense. I hope it does to other people too. And I'm thinking of some other method books that are great. It's great material, but I don't follow what they're trying to do. I don't get the pattern, so to speak, of the progression from one aspect to another. And so I tried to set up something that I really thought, is this going to make sense to other people? I sometimes communication is hard in every aspect of the human condition. So of course, some people might not understand what I'm trying to do, but I tried to have it be really clear and really logical and very focused so that folks can feel like I'm making progress and I can see where I'm supposed to go next. And this makes sense, even if it takes time. So.
Yeah, and video courses are interesting. I've thought a lot about this. I've done a few myself, and I've gone through at least a dozen, and I think nothing to me will replace the beauty of like the person-to-person teacher-student lesson experience. It only enhances that to me, because if I get it, I'll have a like your course on maybe I'm watching on my phone and I'm looking at the musical examples on my iPad, and you can stop and rewind and see the multiple angles. And then I've had many students come to me and they've gone through maybe a Discovered a Little Bass course or something like this. And so you get this richness of experience and you get this experience of somebody with your depth of knowledge actually having taken the time to really think through all of these steps. It's kind of like your best version of talking about major blues or rhythm changes or the other topics. And I think that's it's kind of like you're getting I'm sure all your lessons are lovely, but this is like, you really
distilled,
you put out the best version. And I know I didn't always put out the best version of topic X, Y, or Z, in the thousands of hours of teaching I did over the years. So I think it's a really cool experience to just it's like taking in like a concert or something like that, where someone's really like polished everything. And it's just it's an interest. If people haven't done that before, I'd encourage you to try. And you do get a bit of that experience on YouTube just watching, but I think it's really super cool. And we've got a couple comments here. This is Danilo again. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Danilo.
Yes. I am always trying to add structure to my, to everything I do. And appreciate it. Thanks, folks. And if anyone has questions for Matt about anything, we've got him on the line here. And I'm here. Really, yeah, exactly.
Tell me.
And so, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to totally take a left turn question to you.
Let's do it.
Because I just skimmed the Stravinsky thing you just put out.
Yes.
So I just skimmed it briefly. So the idea is that Stravinsky didn't have any specific things for bass?
Okay, yeah, great question.
Before?
So folks, listen, we just put out an edition through Boozy and Hawks. We worked with Boozy to get this Suite Italian for double bass and piano. This is an arrangement done by Brian Powell, who teaches at the Frost School of Music at the University of Miami. Stravinsky had done his famous Pulcinella Suite. Stravinsky himself had adapted that for violin, and I think it was kind of mixed results. And then he adapted it for cello, but never. His music that he wrote for bass, from Soldier's Tale to Rite of Spring to you name it, or Pulcinella with the vivo bass trombone soli. He wrote so magnificently for bass, but he never specifically wrote anything like a solo piece for bass. So Brian took the cello and the violin adaptation that Stravinsky did of Pulcinella, and added in a couple of other movements, including the viva, which is the famous thing we play for orchestral excerpts. And he put this edition out. And it was I think it took 7 years to get the rights, the Stravinsky estate, and going through Boozy. And so so this is just it's the first time we've got a full suite by Stravinsky, adapted for bass by a bass player, and it's a really cool new addition to the repertoire. And I love. It's so exciting to see the new compositions coming out for double bass. Whatever the context of music, we're talking about classical bass right now, but it's great to see. It's great to play the music of these great composers that never wrote exactly for our instrument. There's a wonderful edition that we put out with a wonderful bassist named Jacob Warren. He's going to be playing the solo recital for next year's ISB convention. He took the Debussy cello sonata and arranged it for bass, and it's not easy, and neither is this Stravinsky, but to have somebody who really knows the instrument and just really with the utmost respect and just really thinking through how this could work on bass. It's so cool to be, and it actually works great on bass. And so I love the new compositions for bass, and most of my recitals are new works written for the bass, but it is so cool to actually, and once you do that, it's like you start playing music of Debussy, like a solo piece on your instrument. You're like, wow, this is amazing. It's like violinists get to do this all the time, or like, even bassoonists with the Mozart bassoon concerto. So it's really cool to be able to feel like you're interacting with these composers and their great works in a way, besides playing the orchestral parts, which are also great. It's a very long way of saying, new edition of that. And it's just another one of the things I think it's so cool what we bass players are doing. And the more you look, the more you see, like this amazing course that you put together, and you've got such a wealth of knowledge, and it's so cool to get into that. Or like the other, the Debussy, the Stravinsky, it's we're kind of all lifting up the bass world together.
Right. Yeah. I was so did you happen to catch it, just a little bit of a moment, but just by chance, sometime last year, Paul Thompson and I put out a video about Percy Heath. He put out one and I put out one at the exact same time. The exact same time. It was great. It was awesome. And we're like, let's just flood the internet with stuff about Percy Heath. But it's true. I mean, obviously, there's the good and bad to technology. This is certainly a good that we're able to access this. I mean, I heard you playing even those little bits of the Stravinsky. I was like, man, oh my gosh, those melodies. Holy moly, that's beautiful. Wow. Mm-hmm. And I remember I tried to play when I was young enough to not know that I shouldn't have tried. I didn't do it professionally, but I was messing around with this little orchestra with Soldier's Tale, and I was like, "Yeah, this is great!" I had no idea, that I shouldn't be doing it, but I have great memories of that, And talk about trying to get your arco chops together. Oh man.
Yeah, that's a spicy one to dig into. If haven't checked that out. Yeah, both. I admire so much the work that you're doing and the work that Paul's doing. And one of my, every time I do one of these YouTube lives, I think I should do this more regularly because it's such fun. And one of the few I can count them on one hand, I think, that I've done over the years was with Paul. And Paul came on to celebrate our 10,000 subscriber. That was our 10,000 subscriber celebration. At the time, Paul had maybe 4,000, 5,000 subscribers, but it's like, wow, this is amazing work that Paul's doing. And then fast forward, and Paul's way over 100,000 subscribers, and he was just starting to blow up when we had that chat. And then I had such a lovely experience. It's this cool thing of online friendships turning into real world friendships. I've hung out with Paul in person several times, and finally this March sat down to do an interview with Paul in person. And we got some more wisdom. More wisdom from Chuck. Here we go. Get us back on topic. Play melodies and your bass lines will improve. Can you talk about that, Matt? There's a lot of wisdom in that, in that sense.
I can add my 2 cents, but of course we welcome anything from the living legend like Mr. Israel's that wants, if you want to add anything else. But for me, I think about remembering that walking bass lines are themselves actual melodies. They are actual independent melodies. They just are supposed to have, or at least conventionally, they have a function as well. So you've got to toe this line between two things. And the magic comes in, how can I create an interesting melody and also be functional? But to me, personally, Israel Crosby, who was the famous bass player from the famous Ahmad Jamal trio, as far as like straight on walking lines, being melodies unto themselves, he to me is one of the masters of that. And I think what Mr. Israel's might be saying here is, when we study and understand and are able to execute and have actual sort of themes of melodies in your head, it broadens your thought about what can I do in the melody of the bass line that I'm creating. One real small thing, for example, is that Israel Crosby would have commonly inserted. Okay, great. Mr. Israel says yes. Israel Crosby would have commonly inserted what we would call like a natural 9 or a natural 6 on major chords. That is, they're very acceptable, and it's almost generically vanilla for a soloist. But to place it as not just as a passing note, but as an intended and purposeful and focused part of the melody of the bass line, it's a little bit unusual. Like, he's bringing attention to this, and he's as the new Samandal, our friend
Cole Davis.
Yes,
Cole,
as Cole said one time so well, like he's great at rhyming, like his lines rhyme themselves, and so he will play will manifest that idea of a melody where you have sort of a phrase that answers itself, or the phrase and then continues on and then answers later, and so on. It's sort of this compositional thought in the bass line itself. So it's not purely, of course, just play what I want. There is some kind of guardrails that should exist. Again, we're talking conventional, traditional jazz. And additionally, we want to make something worth listening to within those guardrails.
That's great.
Does that make sense?
What makes sense to me.
Okay.
And folks, anything to comment or additional thoughts or any questions for Matt, just throw them in the chat. And everything, I mentioned this earlier, but all things Matt are linked up in the description. So if you want to,
thank you.
Hopefully you're subscribed to his YouTube channel already if you're watching this on YouTube. But definitely, I would recommend that. And one thing that I think is super cool that you've got as kind of like a bonus maybe in this course is you've kind of done a music -1 with your album, right? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I see Mr. Israel's and Rob Legg and some couple answers too that we can questions and responses we can get to too. But let me answer your questions. I'm sorry. Autocorrect. Okay. So what you were saying about the music -1? I was reading Mr. Israel's comment. So I recorded an album with some unbelievable players some years ago. Ulysses Owens on drums, Gerald Clayton on piano, who you all may know is the son of John Clayton, who we know, and Freddie Hendricks on trumpet, Ron Blake on tenor saxophone, Michael Dees on trombone, and they're primarily original compositions. There's a couple standards on there, but it occurred to me when I was doing this course that a lot of what I had written was linked to this DNA of these compositions that I'm talking about. And so I had the idea, well, okay, so I've got these tunes that are originals that are pretty closely linked to a lot of the concepts I'm talking about. Let me just remove myself from this great scenario I put myself in and let you, the student, viewer, listener, play with these guys. So I went to the master tracks, to the actual original session, removed the bass. And so you as the listener, and there's not a lot of them, I think there's 4 or 5 maybe, but you can play with Ulysses Owens, you can play with Gerald Clayton, and play my original compositions, which of course are, the charts are available for you, and the full recording is available to you, and so on and so forth. But there's also tracks where I reduced, and well, not just reduced, eliminated the bass entirely. So you get to play better than me along with these great guys. And I've known them for a long time, especially Ulysses and Michael Dees. We went to Jewelart together, and it was really, really a pleasure to do it with them. And that was actually Ulysses, who some may know is a really prolific producer now. This was his first sort of job producing. I hired him as my friend to produce this album for me, and I think it came out great. So I hope everybody else likes it too.
Yeah, it's a very cool aspect to the course, and right as I was pitching you that question, we got some good comments, and so just kind of backing up, we were talking about Israel Crosby, and Chuck chimed in with logical sequence and development. Israel Crosby, and the autocorrect got him. So and then also Rob Legg has a question: any modes discussed in this course? And I know the answer to this because I saw you. I was watching one of the lessons, but maybe can you talk about modes in the course?
Yeah, absolutely. What I'm doing here is, yes, I am discussing the use of modes, but I'm not trying to cover everything. Rather, I'm talking about how can we apply at a not a rudimentary, but a fundamental level. So above rudimentary, but I'm not trying to say, here is every option that you can, here's every scale or every possible scale, not just every mode that you could play over a minor chord, for example. But I do include, yes, this mode will work here. This is all, this is a good first choice. Start with, the generic vanilla thing. Like if you've got a dominant chord, the Mixolydian mode is one obvious first place we sort of discuss making note choices from that collection of notes. And there's a couple other perhaps little bit next step suggestions as to what note choices might work. But I think what I hope comes across is that when we are examining the works of great players, like Mr. Israels and so on, when we're examining that, we often use this information about the mode, the Mixolydian mode, for example, since you mentioned it, Rob, we use that as a foil to say, okay, what is actually happening here? Like normally we would tell students Mixolydian goes here, but why is Ron Carter doing XYZ, which is not the Mixolydian mode, right? So it rather than becoming the tool in and of itself, it becomes a mirror or a prism to look at making choices.
Very cool.
And then Mr. Israel says, go ahead.
Yeah. A couple more from Chuck, and thanks for sharing your knowledge, Chuck. Play along recordings have a significant place, but of course, players can't react.
Right.
To what you do.
Yeah, that's true. But there are some great recordings. There are some great recordings of great masters. Specifically, oh gosh, it's escaping me. Mr. Israel, maybe remind me. It's Nat King Cole and Buddy Rich, and there's no bass on this great recording of standards. Gosh, I can't remember who it is. I mean, one of the pantheon of tenor players. But anyway, the time feel is unbelievable, and there's no bass to start with. They never recorded with bass. So that's, another great place where, if you want to sort of get a sense of having a really good time feel and not play along with the metronome or like iReal Pro, that's a great place to do it. And
very good.
Yeah.
Lester Young.
Lester Young. Thank you. That's it. Oh gosh. Thank you. It's killing me. Thank you, Subschool 5. Oh man,
And a topic that I'd love to hear about too is how was your experience at Juilliard? And you
woo.
were even talking about the Juilliard audition. And I remember a
Hmm.
mutual friend of ours, Dan Shimolinski. He was
Hmm.
my former student when he was a kid. He was telling me about his Juilliard audition. So maybe like even what you dropped a hint about the Juilliard audition process. Maybe it changed over the years, but what was that experience like?
Yeah, it did change over the years because I came to then be in the rhythm sections. I would be called over the past several years to go and be in the rhythm sections for those who are auditioning. So I'm seeing what they're doing now, and some of it is similar, but a lot of it is very different. At the beginning, it was much broader rules, so to speak, like choose a blues, choose a solo thing. It wasn't much actually that I remember that was sort of required outside of the audition tape itself, which had a few specific tunes that you had to submit before you got the live audition. And what threw me off in that first live audition, besides having the table of folks and the faces, Rodney Whitaker was teaching there at the time, who is one of my bass heroes, and so he was behind the table. And it was part of the reason I wanted to go in the first place, because he was teaching there. And so I went through my prepared pieces and so on and so forth. And they said, all right, just walk a D flat blues. And my nerves combined with my just laziness of never really feeling like I had really fully got inside a D flat blues. I stumbled bad. It sounded bad. It really did. And I mean, Rodney came to me afterwards. He was like, man, it was just a D flat blues. That's all he said. It made me feel even worse. But so that I didn't get in then. But you darn well tootin' that I worked on D flat blues after that.
I'll bet.
Yeah. And then the next year I auditioned again and thankfully was accepted. And that was similar requirements. But I was just obviously better prepared for what the experience would be like because I had done it before. So I had prepared sort of a solo piece in the spirit of Oscar Pettiford, and had more. I think I was less trying to impress and more do what sounded good, if that makes sense. I think you probably have heard or have given this advice too, right? Just like you want to sound good. It's if you can't play something well, it's never going to work. So don't try to impress somebody with what you can't play. But that was good. And then the actual experience itself was a mixed bag. And it is, at the time they were just starting. So I give them a lot of leeway as far as everybody's sort of working it out on the fly. There were a lot of changes sort of mid semesters and mid year, like suddenly there's a new requirement. For example, one semester, or kind of in the middle of the semester, we had all these songs that we were supposed to learn for our regular improv class, where they had amazing players, true masters, Kenny Barron and Benny Powell, and just all these masters would come in every week and do an improv class. We had to learn tunes for them. And suddenly, middle semester, the requirement was that we had to learn all of those songs on piano in every key. And we're talking about like Wayne Shorter tunes and stuff too, which like wouldn't necessarily be played in any other key than what they were written in. And so play on piano, every key, be able to do in every key and sing the melody. And that lasted for one semester because nobody could do it. I'm sure somebody could do it, but most of us couldn't do it. So, they were figuring some things out. But the level of players, obviously, that I was lucky enough to be around and befriend and get experience just playing in all these sort of different environments was amazing. And there's nothing like that experience of being, nearly 24/7 enmeshed and immersed in the music. I mean, I was an adult with bills, and I had to take out loans just to pay my bills because there was so much work. And kind of on the negative side, if I would say, I mean, one thing I learned there was how to turn in work that I wasn't happy with, because I didn't have time. For me, the way my mind works or whatever, I couldn't get it done to the degree that I wanted to. So I was constantly turning in stuff or performing stuff at way below the level I wanted to. And you just had to be okay with it because it was absolutely it was just never ending, never stopping. And my second year, there were 3 bass players at the time. And my second year, in the first semester, 2 of the bass players left. So that only left me for all the ensembles and all the gigs. Now, David Wong, who you know, he filled in because he was at Jewelart doing the classical thing at the time. So he filled in at a bunch of places, and he's an unbelievable jazz player. So he filled in some of the ensembles, but most of the concerts and recitals and so on fell to me to do. So that was a lot of tired feeling.
Yeah, I'm getting exhausted just thinking about it.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Well, Matt, I don't want to eat up your whole day, and I appreciate you carving out some time and
thank you
doing a live chat. And I from the first YouTube video you put out, it looked great. I remember it's like, what's your secret? And you're like, well, my wife's a photographer, so I have really good gear. But beyond the presentation, which is lovely, just everything that you've dug into in this course is super cool. Just a fun, and thank you so much to Chuck, Mr. Israels, and Rob, and Subschool 5, and Danilo, and everybody who's chimed in. And feel free to obviously leave a comment if you're watching this on the replay. Couple of final comments here. Ruth Underwood left Jewelart to go play with Frank Zappa. I'm a huge
Did
Zappa
not know that.
I didn't know that either. So thank you, Matt. Thank you. Everybody who's watching this. The course is available if you want to check it out. I've got that linked up in the description. Obviously, give Matt a follow on YouTube if you aren't, and I've got his website there as well. Anything else? Thanks for all these comments from everybody. Really appreciate it. Anything else you want to get out there, Matt, before we give it a wrap?
Oh, thank you so much. I just wanted to mention too, for folks that might be, say, not in the United States, maybe English isn't your first language and so on and so forth. I took some time to make sure that all of the videos have English subtitles on them, which isn't a default setting for most of these courses, at least to my understanding. I had to go to do some special work to actually do that. So I wanted to let you know that, and also sort of encourage folks that if you are, thank you, Adam. Hey, Adam.
Adam, we need to do one of these YouTube lives. We talked about it years ago. I've actually got a note in it's like amps, pickups, gear. You suggested that years ago. I need to follow up, but it's in my notes. So
there's another bad cat right there.
Good to see you, buddy.
That's a bad cat. Right. So the subtitles, and also part of why I chose the platform that I chose was that it allowed me to upload in 4K. So if one wants to stream at high quality, there's that. And then also there's a Facebook group, as I mentioned, and also a dedicated email address if people want to send me assignments or ask questions or send performances for feedback and so on and so forth. So hopefully that will sort of help people feel, as I say earlier when we were talking, more engaged with the call and response and the targeted transcript, actually asking people to transcribe great lines with me, and having homework and so on and so forth. So thank you so much, Jason. Your work is amazing. And I mirror what everybody's saying here in there. Thanks to you for all you do for us.
Oh, well, thank you. Right back at you. And we've got a podcast coming out. It's actually going to be next week because the Stravinsky project got in the way. But we've got a deep dive with Matt. If you want to dig into some audio and some different topics, that'll be coming out. A week from now. Thank you to everybody who's been here. Matt, you're the best. And everybody have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jason.